right. Check 1, check 2. This is it. Welcome to the Cannabis Coffee Hour with your host, me, Rob Cantrell. We're up in the 200s. Welcome to the Cannabis Coffee Hour. This is it. I'm live in Prospect Park, rocking it in Brooklyn. Biggie knows what's up. I got a great guest, one of my dear friends. It's not even a guest. That's what I love about doing this podcast, that I get to kick it with old friends because we're all hustling. We're all out there. This dude is a certified cannabis legend, certified writing legend. But beyond that, he's a good dude. I've known him for like 15 years. He's always been down to help out any of my comedy shit. Just a great dude to smoke out with, and I always get knowledge from, because he was the absolute senior grow editor at High Times for over 10 years. He's now with a new magazine called Northeast Leaf, which is very cool, which is a little bit more on the cutting edge of what's happening. Cannabis is moving so fast. These are the type of guys that I like to have on the podcast, as well as musicians and comedians, but these guys kind of can give me a little bit more insider insight. He won't mind me calling him. He's definitely a weed nerd, but in the best, coolest weed nerd out there. Please give it up for the one and only Mr. Danny Danko, everybody.
Hey.
I know you're not going as Danko anymore, and your last name is Russian, and I always fucking, it might be Ukraine, but I always F it up. Give me your last name one more time.
Yes, it is Vinkovetsky. Danny Vinkovetsky, but sometimes I use the Danko name, that just kind of as a legacy thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of more of a nickname, kind of skate rat, who you see in the parking lot type of nickname. But let's go one more time. Vinkovetsky? Vinkovetsky. That's dope. That sounds like a rapper name right there.
It's
Vinkovetsky.
It's Russian and Ukrainian, so,
And he was born on, I know all this stuff, I'm not a creep because we've been down for so long, but he's born on 4th of July, and he is a proud American.
Yeah, born in the Soviet Union, which no longer exists anymore, but on the 4th of July, and my family left when I was 3 years old and was raised here in the U.S. I love it here. I love America, but I also think it can be improved upon. You know what I mean? I'm not...
Yeah, you're not.
And I'm not under any illusions that this is some the greatest country on earth and this and that and the other.
The most moral.
Yeah, no, yeah. I mean, of course, it's a work in progress, as everything is, right?
It's all an experiment.
Exactly.
And this experiment, it's like a lot of it is about freedom. And I think what I'm talking about is like cannabis is exploding right now. It's always been exploding, but it's gotten ridiculous.
Well,
in New York City, so
of course,
to speak, where we've been for the last 10 years.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we legalized it over 2 years ago. The legislature legalized it here. The problem is that they really didn't implement any kind of legal framework until recently. So just in January, they opened the first licensed dispensaries. But over 2 years, of course, people are going to fill the void and the vacuum, and that's what happened. So we have a lot of unlicensed shops and deliveries and events and all of that going on. And really, it's the fault of the government for not implementing the licensed stuff sooner, and so we're in this strange place now where now the licensed ones are opening and there's crackdowns on the unlicensed ones, but really what they should be doing is just giving licenses to everyone who's already doing their thing and who has been doing it even prior to legalization. And so our system, the legalization here in New York on paper, it's really amazing. I mean, we have home grow, we're going to have consumption lounges, a lot of social equity card applicants receiving dispensary licenses and things like that, and growers. So, and now, the bigger companies are going to come in shortly, the MSOs, and we'll see how people can compete. It's just tough for any licensed company to compete against the underground market that doesn't have to pay taxes and jump through all the different hoops. So really, I think the solution is to license everybody and just let it be freedom, like you said, freedom, where whoever has got the best product for the best price, that's capitalism anyway. This is a plant that grows from the ground, so allowing one person to do it and sell it, and someone else is doing it and selling it, and that's illegal, seems weird to me.
Yeah.
I just think the less regulation, the less of all of that, the better. And we'll regulate ourselves. That's what hospital rooms do. There's no regulation over hospital rooms from the government. They regulate themselves because they know how important it is to be in compliance, because lives are at stake. And here, no lives are really at stake anymore. And that's what's great about legalization. That's the thing. Some people are like, oh, I wish it was still illegal. It was much cooler. It was this, it was that. Those are people who probably never really suffered at the hands of prohibition, because if you did, then you'd know that all the hoops you have to jump through are worth not going to jail and not, going through the process of all of that, whether it's losing your scholarships or getting kicked off of a organ transplant list, or so many different injustices that occurred during Prohibition. So, that's what's going on here. And, like I said, it's tough to compete when all the licensed cannabis has to be grown upstate, outdoors or in greenhouses, and they're competing with Cali packs that are coming here. It's just, we're in a strange time. We're in the in-between time, and it's interesting to me, having seen it for decades now, bubbling up, and now finally coming to the surface and being, losing some of the stigma, but at the same time getting some of that stigma back, because everywhere you go now you smell weed, right? You used to, but now it's even more so. And younger smokers are a little less respectful, I think, in some ways. Not everybody, but I see a lot of the packaging, pre-roll packagings and things like that laying on the ground. And
I'm not into the kid packaging. I'm not into putting it around
Mylar
candy or all that. I'm not hating on anybody. I just think we got to evolve, and that was some of the regulations that I liked with the New York regulations. They made the artwork not be anything about candy or anything. It had to be original joints,
right?
And it had to be 2 different tones. Everything that was laid out is super smart, but they just don't have the infrastructure to enforce it, because they didn't understand how many people really do smoke weed.
Yeah.
I don't think we understand.
Right.
It's
right.
It's been going, house mothers and mailmen and doctors and lawyers just been hiding back in the woods forever with this shit. But now it's kind of exploded. And like you say, I do find some of the places gross, but I try not to look down upon it. And I have bought weed off of the black market. I like to go to Housing Works. I like to support the upstate growers. That's kind of my taste. It's always been my taste, is that I wanted a little bit of an elevated product to consume as I get older.
Right, and it's it's lab tested, it's licensed. I think
Yeah.
There's something to be said for all of that. Housing Works just announced that they made $12 million in 6 months, which is pretty amazing.
That provides
in competition with all these unlicensed businesses that, they are going to crack down. But you're talking about thousands of storefronts. I mean, they really, when they do crack down, these places open up the next day.
They're not slowing down. I know.
They open up the next day. So
because they know the product moves.
Well, yeah, and they're making money, and the fines are inconsequential. So now, the mayor's talking about going after the landlords, and, he doesn't want to be so heavy-handed as to, start busting down the doors and things, but they kind of have to do something, and to me, the ultimate solution is just license everybody, man. Every place that's open now, let them work it out, and if they're still, not in compliance after that, well, then maybe you can crack down or something. But some of these places are acting in good faith, and I think just because they opened before they had the license doesn't mean they don't deserve to be a part of the system if they want to be.
And the culture here in New York, I have to say, to give it up. I mean, I know this is going to sound weird, but give it up for New York cops. They aren't shaking anybody down. Unless it's a full-on something's going down. You could tell some places ain't all just weed it's getting run out of,
Well, now you see a lot of mushrooms and that sort of thing,
which I think might be better for culture, actually, in the long run.
Yeah, as long as people are mindful about how they're using these things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like psychedelics are something that you should be, prepared for. Set and setting is very important. It's not just something to do on a Friday night. It's something that you prepare yourself mentally for it, whether, and I'm talking about like not microdosing, but macrodosing.
I hear a lot more microdosing goods being more, and I used to do that. I used to take like a cap, because in the 90s, my friends would be doing coke and shit, and I would just take one little cap of mushrooms to go out, to stay up a little bit, to be able to run with the wild kids a little bit. And I've been hearing about that more, but you're right. You're definitely messing with your mind. I haven't done a mushroom. I have a chocolate bar that I've been sitting on that I did a Native American Cannabis Festival a year ago. And it's just sitting there, and I haven't eaten it, but I'm waiting for the perfect time. But now I think it might be a little too old. And I'm hearing, because you got to get mushrooms kind of fresh. What's the word on the street?
Well,
Danny, fresh?
Yeah, I mean, they should be dried out, but you don't want them, crumbling into dust. Yeah, I mean, they're just going to lose some of the potency.
Yeah.
They're not going to be poisonous or anything like that, but
this one was called Penis Envy, which is a popular one. And then I was like, all I'm gonna do is trip about how little my dick is the whole time. I'm gonna be sitting there like, oh damn, like it's right, the mushrooms are right, I have a little dick.
Oh, wow, I love it.
Which is a bad trip. You don't want to be thinking about your dick when you're tripping. You want to be thinking about the universe, the stars, the moon. I don't even know. When was the last time? I mean, not to get pry into it, because I know you've gone to a couple concerts. I thought it might fall into that. When was the last time you had some mushrooms?
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, I went to the Danny Danko show at Citi Field here.
I'm so jealous. I should have done a broadcast from the parking lot.
Oh, man, the parking lot scene was insane. I mean, seriously, with the nitrous balloons, the people are crazy. I mean, they really... I don't know, man.
Did you have? I know you.
I did not. I have. In the past, I have been known for
an old deadhead.
My balloon consumption.
Same.
But I was so kind of like disgusted by, not disgusted, but just kind of like turned off a little bit by just how prevalent it was. Like, there was just hundreds of people with 5 balloons in each hand trying to sell balloons for $20 a balloon, and I don't know. It just you
gross.
see people falling down and I, it was a little gross, honestly, for me, from the outside looking in. And I have been that person, okay? It's like I have sold nitrous. I have done a ton of nitrous.
No judgment. But
But
we all evolve and see stuff from a different angle.
Exactly. The show was amazing. I did, somewhere between a micro and a macro dose, I would say.
Perfect.
Just enough to get the giggles and get the colors to be a little more vivid, and the lasers and the light show, and I saw the Dead with Jerry on the last tour. Well, not the greatest tour, but I saw a Boston Garden show, 94, 95, around there sometime.
Wow, epic.
Which was great. I have that on my resume or whatever. But I felt like Mayor did a great job, and I felt like they, it's just a great vibe. And, you can hate on it if you're like old school and you only want to see Jerry and the Dead, and to me it's just another iteration.
You got Bobby Weir up there, man.
Bobby Weir, and he was great too. I'm not the hugest Bobby fan, but he was amazing.
That's
he
like
did
seeing
a morning
Jordan.
He did a morning dew that really made me emotional, and like,
oh shit,
and they did Dear Mr. Fantasy. They did a bunch of great tunes. And it was really wonderful to be there and experience it, and especially experience it, with just a little bit of a psychedelic tinge to it too,
Yeah. Did you take the subway?
I did, actually. I did. I took
Coming
a 7
back on
train.
the subway, on 7 train on mushrooms after the Dead coat, bro.
Yeah, well, you've got some like-minded people with you on the train as well, so it was really nice. And
New York doesn't give a fuck if you pay attention. If you, that's what I love about New York, is like you could be the biggest freak or whatever, but if you don't bother anybody, nobody bothers you, even if you are tripping.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, again, it's all about set and setting. I don't know that the subway is always the best set and setting, but it's also a cheap ride home.
Great ride home. It's air conditioned. Sometimes I'm like, sometimes I come from the airport and there's always this moment like, should I get an Uber or should I take the AC train, or should I take this train home? And sometimes the traffic's so bad that the subway is even better.
Oh, yeah. Oh, definitely. Especially, in Manhattan, Midtown, and things like that. It's
That's
Even-
just to tell people out there that it might be visiting in New York. Yeah, Manhattan. Yeah, definitely take the subway in Manhattan for sure. Like if you got some shit uptown during some stuff, yeah, you gotta sometimes utilize just to boom, boom, boom. And it is it's weed friendly, but you could have a meltdown down there. But if you're experienced, you don't have to drive, which is always a better look.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so many events now here in the city. It feels like every night there's a cannabis related sesh or competition or some kind of get together, whether there's music or performances. It's pretty amazing. We have a very unique cannabis culture here in New York, and it really goes back to the jazz era. We're talking the 30s and the 40s, Louis Armstrong and Mesro and reefers, sticks, and all that stuff. I mean, that's how uptown and downtown met. You know what I mean? That's how the first real integration was white people from the village going up and listening to jazz in Harlem and smoking weed, and that was like taboo and frowned upon by some parts of the culture, and yet it's really how these cultures meshed. And then if you fast forward
through music and cannabis,
right,
it's always
but you can fast
people
forward to the 70s and you could say the same thing about hip hop and graffiti and uptown meeting downtown over some weed. Same thing. It was like the art world of Soho suddenly embracing graffiti writers and all of that, and hip hop being coming down and being performed at clubs that are punk rock clubs and things like that. The blending of these cultures, it's almost like weed is the glue, or the common thread that unites people, and I think we could use a lot more of that these days.
Yes.
Something to unite us. Because it's not partisan. It
so
can,
much has been. Yeah, no, I get what
can
you're
be
saying.
politically, in some cases, but the reality is people from all walks of life smoke weed, all ages, all genders, all cultures.
I've gotten high with Republicans.
Yeah, me too. But it's a uniter, not a divider, to quote the original Bush.
Yeah, it is, because it does bring you back to the moment, and it kills, not kills the ego. I don't think you can ever kill the ego, but the thing about cannabis and psychedelics, it makes you aware of the ego. And if you're old enough, you can kind of see where, that's what's nice about you and I are both enjoying a spliff right now. I have some homegrown outdoor upstate. Shout out to, my buddy Tim. The producer who's been helping me, made sure I had some good homegrown for the podcast. And then you actually have one of my favorite strains. That looks like some powerful cannabis right there.
Yeah,
that's Headband.
Let's trade. That's the Headband. That's just won the Battle of the Brands contest that I helped to judge here in Manhattan. And, that's the classic kind of Headband. What's funny is it won.
That tastes like High Times Office.
What's funny is that it won, the category that it won was called like old school throwbacks, and like I had to like come to terms with the fact that like OG and Headband and Sour are now like throwbacks.
I know.
You
These
know,
are all
whereas
strains,
to
everybody.
me, I would think Haze, Haze is the throwback. White Widow, to me, old school is different than. Hold on, I'll wait for a second.
That's what's good about having these Shure mics. Yeah, we got the choppers up here, but cannabis is legal. So
Yeah,
get off our back.
somebody's headed out to the Hamptons.
Yeah. That's definitely, some stockbrokers fucking going to make his early vacay. What do you think of that? This is great.
It's
buddy.
nice. It's nice. It's very much, like you said, like a homegrown kind of vibe, earthy. But nice, a different vibe. I think definitely milder, more mellow, and more of a daytime smoke. Even though this Headband is a pretty decent daytime smoke, it can knock people out too.
Yeah. It's kind of like up there with Kush. Like there's certain, it's kind of upper tier strain.
I think the original reason it's called Headband is because it kind of like hits you in the forehead. Sometimes you get a little sweat and you feel it like kind of behind the eyes.
If you need any water, I got you some water.
I got coffee here.
I know we got coffee.
The show's about coffee, so
I know, but I've done this show before where I got lit up, and then all of a sudden I pulled the Mitch McConnell, and I started.
Right.
I started fading. But not to talk politics. I'm not trying to talk politics. I'm trying to talk cannabis. And I'm talking about this Danko. Now, did you see Mickey rap? Did you see him do Fire on the Mountain, the rap
I didn't
version?
Didn't get the rap. But
SF got the rap, right?
I know. Yeah, they did.
They only got it one night.
Those were the last shows, I believe, and so yeah, they busted that one out. But
Fire on the Mountain is one of my favorite, not even favorite tunes, not even favorite Dead tunes, like favorite tunes in general.
It's
like,
a good one.
It's just always in the background, like, oh, this song's good, and you turn it up.
Yeah, it was a fun show, And the night before, I went to The Cure with my wife and some friends from out of town, and that was a great show too. That was at Madison Square Garden. I'm actually going to see Phish tomorrow night, Friday night. They're doing 7 nights here at MSG. Not the biggest Phish fan in the world, but their live show is amazing, and
I want to go out to more music. Tell me more. Yeah, I love all of this. I think everybody's kind of scared coming out of COVID, and then with stand-up, it's hard to get out. But when I do see it, I was hanging out with somebody who was asking me the last concert I saw, and I couldn't remember. So that's what I'm psyched. You saw The Cure, and I remember The Cure, only that one song that I know that used to have, but they would do a funky drummer beat on it, and they go, do, 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 do. Do you know that one?
Yeah, I think so.
So Close to You, is that it?
Yeah, that's the one.
That's the jam.
Yeah.
And it has get the remix with the funky drummer is the sickest.
Yeah, no, they put on a great show, and again, you could smell the smoke in the air.
Do you think
all throughout
Cure's
the garden.
A stoner band?
No, I just think that within every community there's like the stoner culture. I mean, even like the craziest communities. I just feel like it's something that's part of every culture, and something that can unite us. And I think
it is.
Hopefully,
computer culture, like there's dudes in Apple, like super Apple nerds that just code and smoke dabs all day.
Yeah, well, and we've talked a little bit about psychedelics, but I don't know that we would have computers and iPhones and all of that the way we have it now without psychedelics. A lot of those guys, Jobs and the people at the forefront of basically creating what we now what's ubiquitous, the phones in our pockets and the computers that we do everything on. That culture, psychedelics created it. I mean.
Yeah, it was IBM before that, but those cats kind of opened it up. Like, they were like, oh, you can't, because before then, like, you and I are old enough to see, like, the rise of computers. I remember houses not having computers, and then I remembered having a personal computer, and then it would kind of go into these stages where now everybody has a computer. It used to be this thing that collected dust. Some people used it. Some people played that video game that was like the Olympics on it.
Yeah.
But then it went into more writing. Like I had one of the big early Macintoshes that I used for school.
The Macintoshes?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and they got smaller and smaller, and they basically got, to the point where you can put a computer in your pocket and bring it with you everywhere you go.
Yeah, now we have these absolute supercomputers. He's out.
Yeah.
We did have a park dude just stroll by. Danny went into old school.
Technically you're not supposed to smoke in a city park.
Technically we're kind of running a little wild.
Well,
so that's
you're supposed to smoke anywhere you can smoke cigarettes. And cigarettes are technically not allowed in the park. So, it's good to be respectful of whatever the laws that they give us, as much as possible. But, it's also an open air park, and people do smoke in it all the time. So,
check. Yes. I was just checking the amount of time that was on here. Shoot. Let's keep it going. It's funny how we just kind of went back into old school.
Yeah.
But it is we are in Prospect Park, and thank you for doing this podcast, because I'm just trying to take it outside, as the kids say.
Yeah, no, I love it. And it's funny that you say it's old school, because that's the PTSD that we have from the old days. I talked to ChemDog about this too. One point we were at some event, and then we were looking around, and I said, isn't it great, like, we don't have to look over our shoulders anymore and like hide and everything. And he said, yeah. And then he said, but I still do. And so that's something that's ingrained in us if we're in our 40s or 50s or older, and something that younger kids aren't going to have to deal with as much. And I think that's a great thing, because it is stressful and traumatic to have to hide the fact that you're just a cannabis consumer, and like especially just a responsible adult using cannabis, and to have to hide that is infantile. You know what I mean? It makes you feel a certain way, like that this isn't cool, you know what I mean? And like somehow the stigma that they feel about us, we project upon ourselves, because we do have to hide it, you know what I mean?
That's
when
true.
We see a cop or whatever. And now the younger kids growing up now, they won't have to do that. They can smoke in front of a cop here in New York, at least,
Yeah.
not everywhere. I mean, there's places where you could still get the death penalty for cannabis, but here these younger kids don't have that trauma ingrained in them, and I think that's a really good thing. So whatever you want to say about legalization or anything like that, being somehow bad, it's really good, and it's impossible to measure basically what doesn't happen, the traumas that don't occur, and the arrests that don't happen, and the people that don't go to jail,
and lives that don't get affected.
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's baby steps, but we're getting there, and I think we've gotten a long way. I've seen, you came to Amsterdam with us back in, what was that, 2011 or something, or
2007, I think.
That was the first time.
2007.
Yeah. So how that was the only place around then, you know what I mean, where
there was no cannabis cups in America.
Yeah.
And it was almost so underground, like regular people didn't know about it. It was like a thing.
Yeah, we even got raided by the Dutch government, which is pretty hard to pull off, you know what I mean? Like, they're fairly tolerant, but we still got raided a couple times over there. We got raided a few times over here too. But that's happening less and less.
That's good old High Times. High Times is a lot like the Grateful Dead. Are they good or are they bad? Like we talked about with where we talked about like the parking lot of Deadco. Like, there's good and bad in everything, And so High Times would push it sometimes, and then the government would push back, and it was just always like. But the founder was a punk rock dude, and it was founded in the scrappy 70s when it was, and everybody was like, what are you talking about? Pot is like the easiest drug out here.
Yeah. But when I started, we had, when I started, we really had to have our shit together and know from the lawyers what we can and can't do and can't say, and how far we can push things, because, you could get the whole company shut down if you did something messed up, especially in my department, the cultivation department.
Oh my God.
You had to be careful as far as what you did and where you went, and what you revealed, in articles and things like that. So, like I said, we've come a long way. Still a long way to go. There's still people in jail for weed, nonviolent cannabis offenses. Thousands of people. Got to get them out. We got to remove the stigma about this plant, being some dangerous narcotic. We're talking about a healing flower. We're talking about a beautiful plant that's here to help us. So, if it's not for you, it's not for you. But like, some of us really truly love it and really enjoy it, and it enhances our lives in a great way. Some people I know, it saved their lives. You know what I mean? I meet a lot of people that tell me that. And
there's no arguing the what is the what I'm not pronouncing it right.
Minutia?
No, when it's has to do with municipal. It's has to do with your health.
Medicinal?
Yes.
Okay.
There's no. It has to. I mean, it is 100%. First of all, it cuts anxiety. It causes it a little bit. But yeah, as you said, like growing up with that much trauma, being scared from the cops, where you just wanted to for me, it just always would rest my brain and put me in a sense of like looking at things different, slowing down. Like the rat race is for real out here. Nobody can argue that the rat race ain't for real out here.
You talk about being in the moment and how cannabis puts you in the moment. Think about all the self-help books out there, all the videos that people buy, the yoga practices, and all these things that people try to do in order to be in the moment. Everyone's always thinking about the future or the past. but be here now is what Ram Dass said. And there's no better way, I think, to do that, or at least to start doing that, than cannabis and some psychedelic medicines.
It does open the door to the now.
Plant medicines and fungal medicines that are out there that put you right in the moment, and like I said, people pay a lot of money.
Sometimes the moment's too powerful for people.
People pay a lot of money for that, and cannabis reveals you to yourself. I mean, like, that's the other thing. People who smoke cannabis, in most cases that I find, are just better people in a lot of cases because they're self-reflective.
Yeah,
they're able to look at themselves and say, "Wait a second, was what I was doing shitty? Like, am I an asshole?
Yeah,
am I the baddie?
Yeah, everybody's a little bit of an asshole, so it makes you self-aware.
Yeah, and
even
psychedelics
being
even
an
more
asshole,
so.
I'll deal with an asshole if they're self-aware more than an asshole that's not self-aware. Those are two different energies.
Very much so. Yeah, very much so. And it's something that reveals you to yourself. You know, cannabis and psychedelics reveal who you are to yourself.
Yeah.
In the same way that adversity can, and things like
100%.
that, losing, getting devastated in some way, can also introduce you to who you really are, because that's who you are, aside from what you project out there to the world. And weed reveals that to you, and so does some psychedelic experiences. So to me, that's world changing. It's changing a person, but it's also changing the way they relate to the world, and therefore, like, making them a better person and helping them to relate with other people, and therefore spreading love and not anger and hate and fear.
Yeah, 100%, man. It people can
It's a
rag
tool.
on the hippies. Yeah, totally.
It's a tool, though. You know what I mean? I'm not saying it makes you a great person, because there's plenty of shitty people that smoke weed and do psychedelics. I'm saying it's a tool that you can use. It can reveal these things, and it can make you a better person. It doesn't automatically do that, right?
You got to do that. You're still on your own.
There's work you got to do on your own. You got to understand it, and you got to take in what it's giving you. But it can do that. It can help.
And it can help. I do think it's good for older people, like with my knees and my ankles, and anytime being active in life. It's just like something that can help me to like recuperate more healthy. I don't know. For some reason, it's just worked for me.
You mentioned old people. I wrote an article recently about cannabis for end of life experience, cannabis and psychedelics, but for end of life, like taking a dose of psychedelics just in order to come to terms with the fact that you're dying.
Yeah.
For people with late stage cancer and things like that. And
because it's heavy.
It's heavy, but I mean, it's true, and it does help. It can
help you accept it. Of the way of life flows.
Right.
And,
so even that,
it's hard to go against it when you're high on weed and mushrooms.
Yeah, I mean, Aldous Huxley, when he was on his deathbed, his wife administered him with LSD, and they said it was like one of the most peaceful deaths ever. Surrendering to the void. That's what I called the article from the it's from the Beatles song.
Nice.
And actually the Beatles song goes back to like the Book of Death, or one of those kind of
Tibetan Book of Death.
Yeah, Tibetan Book of Death.
I've read parts. I read the Cliff Notes. They actually had like this smaller book that was like the breakdown of it. But yeah, that's heavy, man.
Yeah. So it's a tool, a healing flower that's here on this earth to help us, like all plants. Well, not all, I should say all plants and fungi, because some can kill you, but those experiences are how we evolve too as a species. And I think there's certain things we have to get rid of, and shed to evolve. And I think cannabis helps with that too. Things like religion, like organized religion, and nationality, like really strong nationality feelings and stuff. It's like this planet is all of ours, and we really do need to get back to the planet and the earth. I mean, the hippies were right about that for sure.
Yeah, especially with global warming, it's getting a lot more real, and I don't want to bum anybody out on the podcast because it's like on everybody's back of mind, even like probably the most conservative people, how hot the earth is right now.
What's crazy is, I have a solution, and
What's the solution,
and
brother?
it has to do with cannabis in a weird way, because I learned to grow weed and then became like a green thumb. So like I have house plants all over the house and things like that. But I couldn't have cared less about house plants until I started growing weed. So it opened my eyes to soil and how to care for soil and how to, basically treat plants if you want to keep them alive. And in a way, it's the same with a planet. It's like you sequester carbon in the soil. You improve your soil year after year by adding organic material. You do composting. You do, compost teas and things like that. And you use less and less inputs in your soil, less and less like added nutrients, and just more and more just organic material like compost. And you build up the soil, and you sequester carbon in that soil. And that's the solution for global warming. Just more family farms and less factory farms, more living soil, more, just improving it year after year. And it's more economical. And the only question I had was, could you feed the whole population this way? And the answer is yes, because the whole population was fed this way prior to World War II.
Cannabis seeds I put in my smoothies.
Factory farming isn't how it's always been. Factory farming started after World War II. So we can go back very easily to family farming and smaller farms creating, more heirloom type products grown beyond organically, you know what I mean? Like whatever the certifications
Just local,
are.
yeah.
Yeah, local farms providing food.
You get your tomatoes, you get your kale, you get your raspberries.
And the more you improve the soil, the more, the less you have to add to it as far as plant foods and things.
But us hipsters have to move into these big cities and just get down.
It's all right.
With the
you
funk.
can do it. You can do it in the city too.
You can. We're in Prospect Park, and it was just so nice to come over here because the city will wear your mind down. But when you get into nature, man, as the older I get and the more, and especially with cannabis, helps with you getting back into nature and just into, having a good park near you is key.
Yeah, nice hike with a couple of joints, and it's an amazing thing, and I think more and more people are discovering that because of the stigma being removed or relieved.
Yeah,
and we're just barely scratching the surface right now. Several generations have to go by before that stigma's gone, and then we'll really start discovering even more about the healing properties of cannabis. More testing, lab testing, more doctors getting on board with prescribing cannabis for patients and all of that. So,
and what kind of oils you can get out of it. And I always thought about the paper movement and the what is the reason why we don't have hemp paper making all our paper products? Is it too expensive to grow hemp? Like I tried to buy hemp paper.
People are just very used. It's expensive because people.
You got to go to Canada.
Right. There's not enough of it. They got to grow it for fiber, and basically, people are just used to bleached white paper. The way it is. And it's very difficult to get people to change their ways, just like it is with like plastic bags and
But if you had non-bleached cannabis paper, wouldn't that just go right into the soil? Is it? I guess what kicked in my mind when you said bleach, like a milk carton, a lot of it's because of the waxing and the artwork on it. Like cardboard, is cardboard biodegradable?
Cardboard will biodegrade, but
that's what I think.
But there's also ways to make cardboard stronger or put inks and things in there that make it harder to biodegrade, and certain, of course, if there's waxes and plastics and things. But yeah, I mean, hemp is all about processing the hemp. So when I was younger, we knew we had hemp grown in Canada or China for fabric or for seeds, because it was like Manitoba's harvested hemp seed industry. And
totally.
I was at Headcase Hemp Hats. We made baseball hats and clothing out of hemp fabric. But
this is the job he had before High Times.
Right, this is
called Head
like
Case.
97, 96, 97.
Down for the cause.
And then the hemp industry kind of just died out in like 2000 or so.
I remember it was
there
Go
was a
Hemp.
hemp store in like every little town had a hemp store
Yeah.
in the late 90s, and then it all kind of went away. The industry kind of fell apart a little bit.
I like
and it's all because of
pants.
processing.
It's great
Yeah,
it's great clothing. Like it does breathe. Like if people rag on it and make a lot of jokes like, oh, it's nasty or it looks stupid. But if you have some really good hemp, like a hemp shirt or hemp short, like it almost has like that summertime cloth like feel to it that it breathes.
It failed because it was like
Too expensive?
They tried to separate the rope from the dope. Like the hemp industry tried to kind of like distance itself from any connection to pot, which doesn't make any sense because the only people who care about hemp
they wanted to get in the
stoners.
capitalist environment. Yeah,
right. Well, they had this weird separation, and I see it in the hydroponics industry, or used to see it a lot more, where the hydro shows would get together or they'd have their industry trade shows, and everyone would be talking on the floor would be talking about like peppers and tomatoes and cuttings and things like that, and then they'd go outside and smoke joints and stuff, and then go back into the convention and again just ignore the big green elephant in the room, which is pot is the fuel of this entire industry, and turning your back on it or pretending it doesn't exist or you have no connection to it is bad for business.
Yeah. You got to be down for the Leaf in North Leaf Magazine. Now, tell me a quick thing about this, and then we'll sign off. I'll give a shout out to the coffee that I'm drinking. But thank you so much for coming out. But you moved from a new magazine. What's the magazine industry like these days?
It's tough. Print is very difficult. But luckily, with High Times, we had charged money for the magazine on newsstands. With Northeast Leaf, for the last 3 years, I've been doing this magazine, and it's free. We give it away, so it's advertiser driven, and we just send boxes to dispensaries, head shops, and some hydro stores, but mostly dispensaries throughout the Northeast, from Maine down to New York and New Jersey, for them to just give out to customers as an educational tool for cannabis consumers. So it's really just we cover the strains and the concentrates and that are out there available to the general public at a dispensary, whether it's in Massachusetts or Maine or here in New York or New Jersey or Connecticut and now Rhode Island, everywhere but New Hampshire, basically, at this point. And even they're going to come around eventually.
Yeah, the Northeast likes some weed.
Yeah, so now there's pretty much dispensaries in almost all the 8 states that we cover. So that's what we do. We just we're trying to teach people about terpenes and cannabinoids and flavonoids, so they're not just looking at just THC percentage when they go into a shop, as to what they need for themselves, what they want to, what's best for you might not be the highest THC thing on the board. It might be a different combination of scent and flavor.
Oh yeah, you got to know your stuff. We can talk about terpenes,
yeah,
but I wanted to give you props on Northeast. I always loved the Village Voice. I always loved city papers. Like growing up, but that's how I look at bands. Like I looked forward to like the free, cool newspaper.
Yeah,
and even looking at their ads. Like, so shout out to Northeast. I hope you guys the most success. And do you print on hemp paper?
We don't. We print on regular paper, but it's kind of like a newsprinty kind of paper. So it's and again,
it's recyclable.
When the magazine is free, it gives you the opportunity not to like have to oversell anything. You know what I mean? Like with cover lines. I remember at High Times, we'd have to come up with these cover lines, just like 3 pounds in 5 minutes, and things like that, just to get people to spend
a little
money.
National Enquiry. Yeah.
Well, just like anything, Men's Health is going to always say you can get
it's business.
rock hard abs in
15
minutes a day. But there's no hard sell.
It's
a giveaway.
Being cheesy about
it's a giveaway. We reach people through advertisers that pay for us to exist, and we just try to educate people and be the voice of the culture and the community and the industry all together, because you can't separate it all entirely, especially with 8 different states that we're dealing with.
Yeah. It's a mad world out there, but thank God there's weed out there. And there's great cannabis in the Northeast. I'm a big fan of Massachusetts weed every time I go up there. I like that scene.
Don't sleep on Maine either. Maine is
That's what I've been hearing.
Best.
Maine, is it Vermont in there too?
Vermont for sure, yeah.
Those old hippies have been up there. They all have been, there's always been some good
Vermont's
old hippies up there.
homegrown for decades, many decades.
Yeah.
I can remember.
Isn't that where Phish is from? Are they
Exactly.
From?
Yeah. Well, that's where they got together in colleges and stuff. I mean.
And you're gonna see them tonight or tomorrow?
Tomorrow night,
Oh, shit.
MSG. Yeah, Friday night. They're gonna play. Their last show of the 7 is on Saturday, but.
Are they gonna rock some Tweezer?
I would imagine. I mean, you never know.
That's one
right?
of the best guitar licks in the world is Tweezer. It's one of my favorite guitar licks out there. Some of my favorite bass grooves are Waiting Room by Fugazi, Barney Miller theme, and then there was one other that I've been thinking that was like, wow, that's a great...
I mean, there's thousands.
You got a favorite bass groove? What's one of your favorite bass grooves?
I mean, anything like Sly Stone related,
Yeah.
I would say.
Sly... I mean, there's so many jams of his, but I don't know it all.
I think thank you for letting me be myself. That's got that.
Again. Turnstile, you know you jumped fucking Sly and the Family Stone's lyrics. No, that's a jam. Because being yourself is the key to it all, you know? And that's where I do think about what's cool about cannabis and psychedelics is that it kind of knocks out that judgment zone. Sometimes it amplifies it, but it does make you not as judgmental. You know, that's what they were talking. I was reading this whole thing about LSD and the Grateful Dead. You know, those guys were tripping so much on like all this new fucking great LSD. But it makes you get into the music faster because you're not judging people around you. It's like going to a concert. Like, you can't judge people when you're dancing at a concert because everybody looks like a fucking idiot, you know, especially at any of those jam band shows. All those funky white people trying to dance on beat. But it's fun and cool, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, yeah, man, been doing the magazine. I've been doing the podcast for beginner home growers called Grow Bud Yourself, available wherever people listen to podcasts.
If you want to grow weed, this is the dude to hear it from, my man.
We're on 118 episodes of that one, and I did one prior to that from 2011 to 2018 at High Times called Free Weed, that is also available for people to listen to, and a lot of great information out there for the home grower, the person who just wants to have their little 4x4 tent in their house and grow some weed. And, you know, my book is out there for beginner home growers as well on Amazon or wherever people get books. And I've been doing some grow classes too here and there, live and in person, which is always fun. And
a teacher, a scholar.
Yeah, well, you know, the home grow thing is kind of my lane. I think the best quality cannabis is coming out of small places, you know, and particularly in living soil, if you can manage that.
And it's not grown for money. That's the thing that I like about homegrown. That's this joint I have. Like, you know, it's not like they'll sell it, but at the main time they're doing it for the love, and usually just like they want to smoke something good.
Yeah, I mean, at a certain point, it's going to be the only way you're going to be able to get the highest quality. You know, I envision at some point, you know, home growers that have their extra, you know, that they're not going to need are going to form some type of farmer's market kind of system where you just go to the farmer's market and you pick up a jar of this and a jar of that from your local home grow farmers, small batch farmers, you know, preferably using things like living soil techniques and sun grown, which is amazing, or greenhouse, instead of like indoors under lighting with air conditioning and tons of electricity being wasted. The plant wants to be free. The plant wants to grow in the sun. The only reason people grew it indoors was because it was illegal to grow. You know, you had to hide it. You had to hide it in your basement or in your attic.
But I guess George Washington used to have fields,
yeah, bring
right?
it out. Bring it out and to the sunshine and let it get the full sun that it wants and deserves. And you know what? You get better terpenes, better flavonoids, and better essential oil production from the sun than you do from trying to imitate it indoors under any kind of lighting. So let the plant grow freely in the sunshine, and you know.
I agree. Thank you, Danny. Thank you for being on the podcast. You're such a great old friend. Check out Danny's books. Check out What's the podcast name?
Grow Bud Yourself.
Grow Bud Yourself. Grow Bud Yourself is a funny line and all different. Danny's funny and a great dude. Check him out. And thanks for doing the podcast, buddy.
Thank you. Thanks, Rob.
Yep.
Always.
Peace and love, everybody. Yep. Out into the universe. We're out.